I believe that communities can address their own problems by relying on local available resources.
If you think about investors, investors sit in global financial hubs and they decide basically how the financial markets are run. And do you know that investors decide on where to put their money, not based on necessarily the facts on the ground, but on something that is called investor sentiment? Now, what is investor sentiment?
For too long, African stories have been told through external lenses, marked by stereotypes, dependency, and very little imagination. These stories have never, and we believe will never, be authentic to who we truly are in telling the reality of our existence. And this shift is what our episode tries to make. To see that you and I understand the responsibility of storytelling in seeing Africa rise. Today with me, I have 4 wonderful fellows who are part of the Elevate Africa Fellowship as well as myself. And we will all be, contributing to the topic, transformative power of narrative in reshaping Africa. I'll first introduce myself and then I'll have the lovely fellows do the same. My name is Nicolette Ndigwe Kalu. I'm a filmmaker, award-winning producer and writer, and I also run an NGO that's focused on the obliteration of child and maternal mortality in Africa. Thank you so much for having me. And I have here, please go ahead.
My name is Vuyelwa Nyakaza. I'm South African. I'm the founder and the managing director of Sukume Consulting. And one of the things that we do is we brand nations.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I love that. Brand nations. Over to you, Bola.
My name is Bola Edwards. I am a storyteller. I'm also the co-founder of Proud African Roots, where we use media, arts, creative arts, and entertainment in educating children using African indigenous ideas and cultural concepts to actually educate them about leadership, about the values of leadership. And basically that's what we do in raising a new generation of leaders, captains of industries, and workforce.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Over to you, Daniel.
My name is Daniel. I am from the warm heart of Africa, Malawi. I am a development practitioner. Much of my work has been on community philanthropy, where I strive to promote a self-reliant Africa. I believe that communities can address their own problems by relying on local available resources. Thank you.
We all understand that there are a lot of negative stereotypes about Africa. And I remember listening to someone who once said that the success of one individual does not exactly override the failure of a whole country. And for me, that stood out. And I wanted to start the conversation by asking you, Vuyelwa, what do you think is the impact of how bad is it? What the negative stereotype about Africa, how bad is it on our economy and on us as a people?
The issue is it's bad. I mean, bad is an understatement for me because, as I said, I work with countries and there's numbers that we can put to these things. If you think about investors, investors sit in global financial hubs and they decide basically how the financial markets are run. And do you know that investors decide on where to put their money, not based on necessarily the facts on the ground, but on something that is called investor sentiment? Now, what is investor sentiment? Investor sentiment is whether the investors feel positive about your nation or negative about your nation. So it's called bullish or bearish, positive or negative. And that's how people in these big financial hubs decide who gets the share of financing for projects, for the development of economies. So if your country has a negative image, if it's got a bad reputation, it literally affects your economy, your ability to trade, your ability to attract talent, your ability to attract business coming into your country to create investments and the jobs that everybody's looking at. So for me, there's a huge economic impact that is adversely affecting Africa. That, if we were to put it in numbers, would be in the billions, if not the trillions of US dollars. So it's a huge problem. That's number one. The second issue is more psychological. And I think depending on who you are, that for me is the sadder part because it impacts how we Africans feel about ourselves. If we are constantly seeing, I think you spoke earlier about the poster child of Africa being a snotty-nosed child, dirty, running around and or begging, etc. That affects how the world sees all African children, all Black people. And so whether, no matter how successful, each of us are in our respective fields, no matter how successful our countries are, the stereotypical image of us is always poor, it's always in need, it's always begging, etc. And obviously that affects our collective confidence as a people, as the Black race. And I think part of why we are treated so badly, or the perception of us as Black people is so bad, is because of the stereotyping that has been happening for generations.
Thank you so much. That's such a great way to capture it. So it goes without saying that changing this narrative is as important as the policies and the better government that we're seeking.
Absolutely.
So that brings me to, of course, the fact that one of Elevate Africa's main focuses is transformational change and the narrative change. Why, Bola, do you think this is important? People keep talking about we need better governments, we need more investment, we need intra-Africa trade to be better and easier and all of that. And we have such a reputable organization as Elevate focusing on, first of all, changing the narrative. Why do you think this is important?
That is so important, like what Vuyelwa already said. She said some of the decisions that these guys take at the top level is based on the image that these countries have of themselves, the image they put out there. So it's important for Africa to begin to have a better image out there so that they can begin to, attract the necessary investments that we need for our continent. For instance, what Elevate Africa is actually doing is going back to the drawing board. This was what our forefathers did in the beginning. They used storytelling when they wanted to shape culture, when they wanted to shape society or the community. They put everything they needed, a child or the community, because anyway, the storytelling took place in market squares and in the village squares. And you would have everybody, aunties, mummies, daddies, children, everybody seated right there. And whatever it is they wanted to do or give out, whatever information they wanted to put out there, they put it in a story. And when you hear a story, it changes your mindset. The child is programmed. The human is programmed. And in those days, they would always tell us when you're about to do something or your parents are sending you off somewhere, they would say, remember the child of whose you are and where you come from. So it's important. Oh, yes. It's important for Africans to begin to see themselves in a better light, not just for the world to see them in a more positive light, but to begin to see themselves in a better light, which is why we do the things that we do to build, culture confidence in the children that we are actually raising as the new workforce, captains of industries and all of that. So you put the message, you put the programming in storytelling. And that's why what Elevate Africa is doing with changing the narrative is so important, because there's an African proverb that says that until, I can't put it the way exactly it is, I can't remember exactly, but it talks about the lion being able to tell its story, because as long as the lion cannot tell its story, it would always be the narrative of the hunter that everybody hears out there. Meanwhile, you didn't know whether the lion scratched the hunter and was victorious. But when the hunter gets out there, the hunter is going to tell everybody, oh my goodness, I fought the lion, I gave it, and all of that. So yes, so that's why what Elevate Africa is doing is so important, changing the mindset. The good book says, as a man thinketh, so he is. We need to change the way Africans see themselves and the way the world sees us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. In the end, I think what you're saying is it's in the mind shift first. If one, it's like that picture that goes around of a lion looking in the mirror, a cat looking in the mirror and seeing a lion. Until you can see it, you can't actually become it or believe it.
Which is why I have a question for you, Mums. You're a filmmaker and you tell stories through film. So, what do you think is the solution to some of these issues that we are talking about?
Oh, thank you so much for that, because what she said is absolutely true. Of course, springing from the very high costs that this, stereotype, this negative narrative has on Africa. The first way people knew about us was of the stories they heard about us. Some of us haven't been to China before. Well, we want to go. Why? We heard it is this commercial hub of the world. It's so beautiful. The trains run on the sky and this and that. Some of us have never been to America, but we believe it's the American dream was sold to us from early on. So you can never fault America.
Wow.
Now imagine me coming into America and I'm walking through the streets of San Diego, the choicest part of it, right next to the big hotels. And then you see people who are littered along the road, sleeping there. You would never see that on mainstream media.
I'm already having a mind twist, even as you're saying it.
But look at Nigeria. Like you said, I always say this. Our poster child is that dirty kid on the streets with flies all over, nose running and hungry. But picture me coming into Ethiopia some days ago, and I'm seeing such a beautiful city that looks, it reminded me at night of Dubai.
Wow.
I saw an airport. Being the giant of Africa, I would often think that maybe the best thing in Africa is see it in Nigeria.
That's so Nigerian.
I know, because we think we're better. That's square. And then I come into Ethiopia, I'm like, no way. This gotta be London or something. And you're telling me it's an African country and I've never seen this on mainstream media.
That is fascinating because in the work that I do, I've been to Ethiopia a couple of times. And I think when I said in South Africa and even in other Southern African countries that I'm going to Ethiopia to do business, people look at you like, hello, etc. And what they don't know, for example, is things like Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And that outside of China, which you just mentioned, and Shanghai, actually they call Ethiopia the biggest, or at least Addis Ababa, the biggest construction site in the world, because they are building, as you say, building skyscrapers, everything. So what you saw was what
Daddy did. And the funniest thing, I step out of the airport and I'm like, am I in London? It's freezing. Is this Africa? And we were in Mauritius.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is Africa. And I'm like, why aren't we told these things? Why do we think that we can take our children on a proper holiday to Ethiopia?
Absolutely.
Why do I have to dream of being in Disney or of being in Paris when this Mauritius is beautiful?
Yeah.
We couldn't even enjoy half of it. And that's why my work is so important. Why I would say my work is important is that I am people's first glance, first look. It's like when you're a filmmaker and you've done a film and you're releasing something, you see first look at Nicole's film.
Yeah.
It's your first idea into the world we've created. That's when you know, is it an epic film? Oh, wow, it was shot in London. Oh, it was shot in Nigeria. Oh, that kind of stuff. People's first look at Nigeria is my work. My thesis as an undergrad was on the topic, the influence of Nollywood films on American residents' perception of Africa.
So you studied this
I
stuff?
studied this for a whole year.
Oh my gosh.
I got feedback from Canada, in the end, I changed it from American residents, I changed it to North Americans, because I had so many feedback, so much, like people were so interested in talking about it from North America, like Canada, different parts of the US. They wanted to contribute. And in the end, there's this guy, his name is Paul. He's a doctor in Canada, knew him from nowhere. I put it out on Facebook and he responded and he said, I know that I should avoid certain places in Nigeria because juju will kill me.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh,
Oh my goodness.
this is the
Right.
perception. And then there's a guy I met he's Jamaican. I met him in Katy, Houston, Texas. I was at a restaurant and he came to eat as well. And then he's like, oh, you're Nigerian. You guys always dress so great and stuff. And then he's like, I really want to come to Nigeria, but because of I really want to come to Nigeria, but because I feel like there may not be there may not be good hotels. I don't think I will have a great time. And I was like, oh my God, don't you
You
like-
saw.
So then my work has been so dependent on selling Africa. It's been so focused on selling Africa as a brand. If as a business person, I will not come out and tell you the worst of what I did this year. Oh, I lost 60 million. Oh, I had a movie that we shot and, we
always
didn't
show the
finish. And
best.
I will show the best. Oh, I got this grant. Oh, we did this. We're even nominated for an award. If you will sell your business as a brand, you should sell Africa as a brand. It is shared responsibility. It's not just for our leaders. It's not just for governments. It starts from the grassroots of you knowing that I have a role to play in this journey. If I myself cannot work Africa minded, no matter what I do as an individual, it will never count. Because wherever you come, you will know that you're representing Africa. The failed.
Really, how do we actually
I think
get?
I think what I'm getting her say is that it's each of us as individuals
Absolutely.
playing our own part.
Yes,
But I would be interested to hear from
yes,
Daniel.
Exactly, Daniel.
As a journalist, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes. And from
All right,
also
and-
a government
I
policy.
loved what you
Yeah.
what you talked about. The example that you gave about someone maybe trying to go to a holiday and they would choose a destination that is elsewhere, else from Africa. That's where the power of narrative comes in, because narrative affects almost everything that we do.
absolutely.
And you'd see that because our history and our culture is not well told by ourselves. Instead, we leave it in the hands of other people to tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that we do have is that we don't value our own way of life. We don't value our own systems.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you an example. Like, for example, currently, most parts of Europe, they are grappling with non-communicable diseases. Okay, why? The reason is food. Okay, they consume ultra-processed food.
Yeah.
Most of the food are inorganic. Okay, if you go to the UK, organic food is very expensive. In Africa, much of the food here is
Organic.
And it's
But if you find someone who considers themselves somehow developed, within the continent, they will tell you that no, I don't eat the organic food.
Mhm.
I will
import.
eat something that is originally from Europe. These Europeans, they are running away from this food.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Swap.
that's the danger that we do have, and this danger even goes further to the governance systems that we currently use.
Yeah.
I would say that most of the systems that we are using currently are those that are copycat and maybe to an extent imposed on us. Like, for example, I'll go straight to the issue of democracy. You would agree with me that there was a time that Africa was the heyday of the world. Like we're saying, you would see that there was a mismatch. There is a mismatch between the systems that we are supposed to be using that are suitable for our culture and our traditional values. Instead, we're using systems that don't work for us. There was actually a piece that I was reading the other day by one Peter Ike. So it's an odd piece. Talks about two republics. Okay, so his argument was that colonialism brought in like two publics. One which is primordial, like which one, the one which was working for us. Okay, and another one which is civic space. Okay, where you'd have a system that is built elsewhere, and you are bringing it to Africa in a context which is not suitable for that particular system. It's like you have an Android phone and you have a system suitable for an Android phone, but you want to use that system in a
Yeah.
in a BIOS system, like iOS system, for example. So it really doesn't make sense. I often give a very good example. When someone has, let's say, for example, someone has stole something, money from the government, for example, government coffers, at least for my country, if that person comes to a village, okay, to stay there, and this guy tends to spend part of the money on helping the elderly, maybe helping to preserve the cultural tradition of the society. Much of the time, the people don't own the responsibility to report this guy. Okay, why? Because us as Africans, we are really detached from the civic setup of the system that we use because it's imported. Okay,
Sure.
but if we could have systems that really work for our own cultural values, our own
And authentic
attachment
to
to
what?
basic life,
Yeah.
I think that would really help a lot in terms of accountability, in terms of how we run our own things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the kingdoms of the Empire of Benin, the Mali Empire. They were really vibrant kingdoms, very rich. Okay, those empires, those kingdoms were not democratic. Okay, they were much more of monarchies. Here, every country wants to be democratic. Okay, there's a challenge because we should understand that democracy, the idea of having a governance system, is that it must help countries develop
Yes.
That's correct.
and bring as much happiness to its people. Okay, the question that we should be asking is democracy as it is it helping? Because the narrative that has been there is that democracy has helped other countries, probably in the West, to develop. Okay, forgetting that we had our own systems
Yes.
that were working them. They are saying the narrative that those systems don't work. Okay,
I absolutely
Yeah.
understand.
so that's where we have the problem. If I am to give examples, I don't think there was a country in the developing world that has ever developed with democracy. Honestly,
So
let's
if I were
have-
to, if
that's
I-
so
that's so controversial, and that's very a strong point. So if I were to summarize this conversation from what you just said, it is important that we adopt policies that work for us, not just copycats, not what we see working for the West or the East, but what is tailored to
African-centered.
reality, African centered. It still emanates from who we understand ourselves to
To
be.
be.
Because if you do not know yourself,
Yeah.
you don't have an identity and you would not be able to understand what works for you as a people. I love this conversation. This is such a robust conversation that can't really be exhausted in one sitting. But I would love to say this. It is important that as a people, as a continent, that we understand who we are, that we make clear our identity, and we stand for who we are, and we tell our own stories. We represent our own themes, our own people, our own reality.
Absolutely.
And take it away from the hands of people who haven't experienced the reality of who we are and where we come from. And until we do that, we will forever be misinterpreted, forever be misunderstood, and we will forever be misrepresented. It is great that people or organizations like Elevate understand the importance of this and have created a strong battalion of ambassadors of Africa, the fellows, who are now fixed on ensuring that the African narrative changes to that which represents who we really are and the beauty of our existence and our continent.
Yes.
So then, I would love to say, think about yourself as an ambassador of Africa, not just as an ambassador of your family or your business, but Africa-wide. Think Africa, and we will all be able to see Africa rise soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, fellows, for having me here. And hopefully we can continue this conversation.
It's a very powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.